Recording in progress.
Okay, Commissioner Forcell, we're trying to, oh, there. Can you hear us now? Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Welcome to the April 12th Utility Advisory Commission. I would like to start by welcoming our new commissioners to their very first meeting. Commissioners Megan Motter, Robert Phillips, and Rachel Croft. Welcome, all of you. It's nice to have you. And Commissioner Scharf, welcome back. We do not have any agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Do we have any public comments?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the community would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone.
It doesn't look like we have public comments, but we'll go back and have each commissioner state if they're here. Commissioner Scharf.
I'm present.
And we can go down the line since.
Present.
Commissioner Phillips, present.
Present.
And on Zoom.
Commissioner Forcell, present.
And I'm present as well, Chair Siegel. Now we'll turn to new business and ask if any comments from the public on our work plan.
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to speak on item 1, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone. No hands raised.
Thank you. So we will turn to the one item on our agenda, which is our fiscal year 2023-2024 work plan. And I think the best way to proceed through this is to go item by item and let any commissioners who have comments on each item to raise them. And then we can go to the next one. So we'll start on the first page, which is about the commission, current commissioner's mission statement, if there are any commissioner comments.
As a new person here, I'm probably gonna ask some very naive questions, but I was reading the handbook and it said, I thought it said 3 priorities, and yet there's quite a few more than 3 here. Did I misread, or could I get an explanation?
Good evening. This is Dean Batchelor, Director of Utilities.
Commissioner Phillips, the handbook does say, and it addresses that we should concentrate on 3 items. However, the thing is that we have gone past that amount since we have so many different projects. We also try to focus on, it's really the utility, water, gas, wastewater, electric, and then whatever falls underneath that. And what we've tried to do is categorize the high level projects that the council would be interested with, as well as what they have already been tracking so far that we've had. Some of you'll see that in our items that we've put in here, some of these are actually rollovers, where they'll roll over for some years, or that a project will start this year and it'll be a 15-month timeline or a 16-month timeline. So it rolls over. And so even though that it talks about 3 main projects or phases of when our work plan looks like, we've talked to the council about this, that it does fall within the preview of the UAC, and that it falls underneath the water, gas, wastewater, electric, or fiber funds and the groups that we've identified.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? I just have a couple, we'll update to the current commissioners, of course. And then in the mission statement, it seems to me we left off resource acquisition in the list of what the UAC, so I can read where I think it should go. Would be in the 3rd line, wastewater collection, resource acquisition, comma, fiber optics utilities. So I think that just got left out.
Could you, or Chair Siegel, could you clarify what you mean by a resource acquisition?
Sure. Just so we provide oil, or sorry, gas, water, electric.
Excuse me, I think audio has cut out again.
Commissioner Forcell, can you hear us now? She can hear.
Yes. That was the first thing I could hear is when you asked me that.
Great.
And now I can't hear again.
Test.
So I was asking, I thought it came up at the last meeting or the one before that about whether our recommendations are for the finance committee or for city council. And I thought we had determined it was for city council, whether or not it first goes to the finance committee.
I would agree with that. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work, because we're advisory to the city council, finance committee's advisory to the city council. And there have been many times, in fact, where the finance committee has disagreed with UAC and council has ultimately gone with the UAC.
So I would just remove that from the bullet. And then again, on the same page at the top, sorry to skip around, but water and energy acquisition, conservation, efficiency. I don't think it's just energy efficiency. And on that first bullet, and programs of any utility, not major utility. Any other comments on that first section? Commissioner Forcell? I don't see her. Do you see her? Okay. Would you like me? Oh, okay.
I had a comment for a later section, but not the mission statement.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other comments and on the opening before we get to this first standing topic?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Forcell.
I was just looking at the prior year accomplishments. And I guess the main comment is there's nothing in there about fiber, which was probably one of the biggest things that the UAC discussed and recommended last year. And then I wasn't quite sure the other ones. There's certainly staff accomplishments in a big way. I don't personally recall if we had any discussions or recommendations around AMI infrastructure. We're all very interested in it. But should that be listed as a UAC accomplishment? And the same with the OMS.
Commissioner Forcell. So I remember that we actually brought a report from the outage management system, just around the cost of that was going to be between $750,000 to $900,000. So we just had a discussion on it and we had to move it forward. It was actually an action item. I think on the advanced metering, I think we did early on. We had conversations with UAC. And I think that it is, we didn't have that many updates during the year, but we thought that maybe what we should do is we should show this at least to the council, because we have not gone back to the council actually since the approval of the project, the $20 million project. And we thought that we should at least maybe show what the UAC and staff had been able to accomplish in that.
I could have done my homework better, and if there was a discussion or an action item about it, I think it's completely legit to put it in the year accomplishments. I mean, it certainly is something that the utility as a whole has been working very hard on, so it feels complete. So I think my only comment is just about including fiber as well.
I totally agree. We missed that. We can definitely put the fiber accomplishment in there, and we can update it where we are today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good catch. Any other comments before we move to standing topic one? Okay. Any commissioner comments to standing topic one? Yes, Commissioner Metz.
Yeah. On this one, I felt the measure of success, council approval of rate changes and utilities budget is, kind of a bureaucratic accomplishment. And I thought that was true of quite a few of the measures of success. So I would say, for example, in this case, the measure of success of the the budget is, fair treatment, something like fair treatment of ratepayers, compliance with laws and regulation, and CPAU financial solvency. Seems like those are the, main ingredients of budget. But I think generally speaking, it would be good if the measures of success, can connote some impact beyond getting our plan approved.
Can you say those again slowly so they can get taken down,
Okay.
recorded?
Fair treatment of ratepayers, compliance with laws and regulations, especially regarding equitable rates, and CPAU financial solvency.
Any other commissioner comments? Yes.
Okay, there we go. It says rate changes. And are we actually, again, this is first timers, naive question. Are we approving rates, for example, the spike in rates on gas that occurred in the last couple months? Was that something that the UAC approved? And if so, do we want to put something in here about our ability to control those spikes? Because this does imply that we are reviewing all the rates.
So, no, the UAC doesn't approve that rate of that spike. We saw basically a 4-time rate increase on those rates. We ended up taking, we came to the council to actually up our authorization from CPAU so that we could actually be able to pay some of the bills and use some of the reserve portions of it. So I think what we were talking about here, that the original rates that were approved back for FY23 for water, gas, wastewater, and electric fibers off of a CIP or a CPI. So that's a given. But the others then are, as we analyze what those rates need to be, we usually bring those to the UAC first. And then what ends up happening, they get approved, or we make changes here, and then we go to finance and then go to the council. But for the spikes, we did not.
So on something like gas, would there typically be a much more consistent price that we are taking into consideration when we set our rates? And this happened to be an anomaly where the prices went up and we just, as a city, had to respond by passing those along. And so we do have the ability to set rates for like annual rates. Is that the case?
Yeah, so we set the annual rates, and then gas especially is, we don't hedge at all. So whatever the market cost is passed on to the ratepayer then at that point. But we know that with these historical rates that we paid, we're actually going to look for possibly looking at doing some hedging for the winter months as we go forward, so that we won't be up into that $4 mark where we were before. Maybe we'll be somewhere $2.50 to $3 then on the hedge just for 3 or 4 months, and then it'll go back down. So
is this is basically kind of an annual rate
Yes.
setting. And I see. Thank
yes.
you.
Uh-huh.
So I very much like Commissioner Metz's wording, but to me, it seemed like it falls more in the beneficial impacts. I'm really not very excited about the beneficial impact being the community will have a better understanding of the rates and why they're set. I'm not sure I even necessarily think that's particularly important, but I think the wording that Commissioner Metz proposed fit much better there. And it's kind of the same level as the next one, which is having ample water sources and supply. So, I would submit the possibility of using your wording, which I'm sorry, I don't remember, as the potential beneficial impacts, and then tie some type of specific goal to that. certainly if we leave the goal as being the community having a better understanding, we should have some way of measuring that. I guess I personally don't see that as a enormously compelling goal to have the community understand the rate setting process.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Any other Commissioner comments?
You know, I think this is an interesting discussion in some ways. So typically in my head, it's always been this. Our rates should always try and be historically what they have been below PG&E, frankly. And that's the measure of success to me. Are we as a commission keeping the rates in historical lines or not? Because we're, I don't know, what are we, 20-25% usually below PG&E on electric. On gas, we used to be above PG&E when we used to hedge. When we stopped hedging, that's why I'm always nervous about hedging, because our rates tend to be higher when we hedge. So that's my metric of success is how do we do versus our other agencies, frankly. I keep that in my head and I think about it like that. I've never really put stuff in here, but we could if we wanted to. I think we never done that historically, gone through and said what those metrics are, and maybe we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but that's a discussion we've never really done.
And so are you suggesting that that should be the measure of success rather than the benefit to the?
Well, to me, that's
beneficial
the measure
impacts?
of success. That's what I think it is. I think it's keeping our rates where they historically been. And that's what I would suggest if we're going to put a real measure of success and say to ourselves, what we're really trying to accomplish, which I think we probably should. So that's what I would suggest.
Sure.
Could we couple that? I like that idea, by the way, putting that in there as a goal or a measure of success, but should we also put in the concept of solvency, since of course we don't want to give people great rates and not be able to have the budget be favorable.
Seems like those are two sides of the same pancake.
Yes. I would just add too that rates can be very useful signals that encourage conservation of resources. And so I think that it may be helpful, or I'd like your thoughts and opinions about how you contrast a desire for low rates with a desire to advance conservation goals in these different resources, across these different resources, and then how we think about rates as sort of cumulative rates paid, for different citizens of the city versus rates on a per metric of consumption basis.
So obviously the city council and the UAC have been looking at that issue for at least the last 20 years. We are constrained by doing these legally on how we do it. There's, I can't remember right now, but there's all these different propositions and legal statutes about how we do that. And that's why we always hire a consultant, and the consultant goes through and comes up with what we can do within the law. And basically we do usually try and push to the edge of what we can do on a conservation basis. And that's why we have separate tiers. If you use more electricity, you pay more basically, but I think it's been determined for the most part that having a third tier, for instance, would not pass muster. I mean, it's those kind of things.
I appreciate the clarification.
No, happy to clarify. I've been doing this since like 2009.
Commissioner Forcell.
Yeah, I did just want to weigh in on the idea of, I don't know if it's a proposal at this point that we formalize the metric of being lower than PG&E. That gives me some discomfort. I mean, it sort of puts us in lockstep to an agency that I don't think is an example of an agency we want to kind of be mimicking in any way, even if we're trying to be 25% below them.
That's why
I just think we should have our own goals that are, that were articulated pretty well earlier with Commissioner Metz, but I would leave our competitors, or at least naming any specific ones, out of it. Maybe something about being in line with regional counterparts or something more generic like that.
Yeah, I wasn't opposed to that. I was really saying it where we've been historically relating to other investor-owned utilities, or PG&E being investor-owned and other utilities, other public
I mean,
utilities.
I think we will continue to compare, every year when we do the budget, we look at what is Silicon Valley Power, what is PG&E, and we'll continue to do that. I just don't want to name PG&E in as a success metric.
No, I think that's good. I don't think we should.
So that, oh, go on.
So I think that at this time, I know that Jonathan is actually on the phone. So Jonathan, are you there? Can you help out a little bit? Give some insight?
Good evening, Commissioners. Jonathan Abendschein, Assistant Director in Utilities, and been heavily involved in the rates this year. I think Commissioner Sharp summed it up well, that there are a number of legal dimensions that we have to focus on around conservation. And I think that the guidance, I think the guidance from the Utilities Advisory Commission on the types of policy objectives that you're looking for in the budget and the rate setting process is helpful. I think the discussion has been useful, and we do try to take that policy guidance into account and align the rates as much as possible with it within the bounds of aligning with the cost of service requirements that we have. Dean, did that cover what you were hoping for me to address?
Yes, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that we have something to put into our work plan, what I would propose a way to sort of incorporate this conversation to have continue to so for measure of success, continue to use local comps with a goal, continue to strive for lower rates based on comps where appropriate, or something like that. And I do, putting in CPAU solvency, given some of the, reserve levels, is probably worthwhile. And I mean, if we want to, I don't know how you measure fair treatment of rate payers. Did you have a specific example in mind?
Well, I mean, as a ratepayer, I think of it as, low rates. So I think some of the wording that you just described in terms of comps, and if we're out of line of comps, and we know what the costs of energy going into the electricity is and so on. So, I mean, I think we can figure out if we're doing financially a good job by ratepayers.
So I don't know, did you get that? I mean, people can comment. I'm just trying to move it along and be productive and incorporate the comments. I think they're good ones. Do you have it? Yeah.
Tabitha Boatwright, Utilities Administrative Assistant. So under the beneficial impacts, we maintained the community will have a better understanding of the rates and why they're set at the levels they are being charged. Second sentence we added is fair treatment of ratepayers, compliance of laws and regulations with equitable rates. We stopped it there. We used the solvency over on measures of success. We had council approval of the rate changes, utilities budget, and City of Palo Alto Utilities financial solvency. Then we also added maintain rates historically lower than other public agencies, or we can change that to continue to strive for local rates based on other public agencies.
Why don't we just say historical differences or whatever? I mean,
Okay.
Santa Clara, for instance, is actually lower than us. And so it'd be surprising if you see right.
Okay.
Well, we could say something like informed by cops or something like
Yeah,
that.
so I think that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
I agree. I would still maybe suggest dropping the very first sentence under beneficial impacts. I still don't see anything that ties to the community will have a better understanding of the rates in anything we said and why they're being set at the levels.
I'll take that if you want. So generally, one of the things in government that's really important is to let the citizens know what's going on and to be transparent. And what this really is getting to is a transparency issue, so that if you're a citizen of Palo Alto, you can understand why we made the decisions that we made. That's what I think they're getting at. Dean, I don't know if that you agree with that, but that's the way I read that. And I think that is an important concept and one we must preserve because, oftentimes we are raising rates at 10% or whatever, and people are annoyed. And why are you doing that? What's the basis for doing that? And I think one of the things you'll find that's around this commission is how frustrating it is. Because, none of us want to raise rates. I mean, I particularly think that we should have as lower rates as possible. But at the end of the day, it becomes like the gas utility. How much safety do you want in the gas utility versus how much is that going to cost you? And what are your rates going to be? And so what kind of capital projects are we going to approve as a group? And those become difficult questions. And so we want people to understand those trade-offs we made and why we made them.
That seems totally fair. I'm sorry.
Oh, go on.
And I don't want to sound like the voice arguing against transparency, but if that is the beneficial impact we're asking for, I don't see anything else in this that has any connection to that whatsoever in this, in terms of the that's the way we're measuring this. I mean, if it's important, let's measure it. Let's think of a way of doing it, measuring, but I see nothing in here that says how this can be accomplished and or measured. So totally in agreement on the importance, but if we'll say my piece and then we can move on. But, my belief is we say something is important, then what are we going to do to accomplish it? How are we going to measure it?
I think that, if you can't measure it, I forgot now, I've blown the saying, if you can't, if you can't measure it, you can't monitor it, you can't manage it. So I appreciate that. I look at these as slightly. So let's take a step back. This is not sort of a consulting project. The goal of this work plan is, and this is a pretty new process that City Council put in place. And the goal is really to give City Council a fairly high level with some specifics when we feel it's necessary of what the UAC expects to be working on in the next year. And to give them an opportunity to see where we think we are, to give feedback, whether that's in line with their expectation of our commission, or whether they have different ideas and they can let us know. So I do want to make sure we don't lose sight of the goal in terms of giving us direction for ourselves and how we can measure our own success. I think it's healthy to have these conversations and to think about it and to let it guide us as well, because this is our work plan as well. For a little more context in terms of, I guess one other comment that I look at as the beneficial impacts and the measure of success, those are not necessarily, the measure of success is not about the beneficial impacts, it's about what the standing topic is. So both of those are modifying what the standing topic is and not each other, so to speak. So you have a standing topic on this one, which is the annual budget and rate setting. And within that context, we want to have some measure of success. We've talked about that, and we want to describe why we're doing it and what are the benefits. And for these standing topics, a lot of it is driven by legislation and requirements of utilities, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be sensitive to our customers. And to add a little bit to Commissioner Scharf, especially when we're talking about rate setting, and it's already come up at this meeting, is that the community was very surprised by the raising gas rates, not happy about it. Nobody was. But I do think there was some, I don't know if comfort is going too far, but at least understanding that it was out of our control, and that having customers understand that was actually really helpful. And comforting that they knew that it was a short-term impact. So I do think it's not just transparency, it's actually education as well. So anyway, but with that, we still have to decide what the language is.
Just given what Commissioner Scharf explained, there clearly is a trade-off between consistency of the rate and the price, right? If hedging is something to control for these spikes, I'm assuming we would want to, give guidance on what we thought. Do we think it's worth slightly higher rates to avoid the spikes, or do we want to consistently? And is that something we should even put in this level of a plan, or we're just going to strive for low rates, and low rates includes we don't want spikes?
We're going to probably have a whole discussion on this. And one of the things we should keep in mind is there's a thing called the Brown Act, which I'm sure they've been somewhat familiar with. And we're not really supposed to have really in-depth discussions on items without noticing them to the public. So, and we haven't gotten there yet, right? But for instance, we couldn't now take an hour and discuss that issue. That issue needs to be agendized, the public needs, and they'll bring it to us. And so I think you're going in the right direction, which is this is supposed to be high level. And we're not supposed to make any decisions really at this meeting as to which way we go on, hedging or not hedging. That's a decision that staff has to do work on, show us what they're thinking, all that kind of stuff.
And as you notice, right, it is an item on the work plan. And so, yeah, we just don't want to get too much into content. We really want to stick to the work plan because that's what the public is expecting us to discuss tonight, and they may have chosen not to attend because of that. Okay.
This is Tabitha Boatwright again. There is one thing that I need to mention. In the beneficial impacts, the term fair treatment of ratepayers, legally, I can't say that. That's something that I would have to talk to my attorney about. So the proposal is something along the lines of, what did he say?
So like
Demonstrate good value for what people pay for their utilities. So, but to say fair treatment, that's what's fair treatment to one commissioner, maybe not fair to another or considered. So we can't really use that terminology, but I can use another phrase.
I actually think if we keep it, if we already have incorporated in the comp approach that we have taken in the past, and we're talking about murky legal position, I don't think this is the place where we take that risk.
Okay. So understanding topic number 1, beneficial impacts. The community will have a better understanding of the rates and why they are set at the levels they are being charged. I'm going to remove fair treatment of ratepayers. However, we can maintain a compliance of the laws and regulations with equitable rates. Then we changed the measure of success to council approval of rate changes, utilities budget, and City of Palo Alto Utilities financial solvency. Maintain rates historically differences to other public agencies. I think we should rate ranges. Yeah.
There you go.
Can I suggest a nitpicking item, since I don't know what the community will, what is better than what? So should we say the community will have an understanding of the rates? Sure. I mean.
Also, are we bringing back the finance subcommittee? Because if so, I think that would be under resources needed for the rates.
that we should.
Yep.
So we'll add that.
So we move on to standing topic 2, water supply. Commissioner Purcell, did you have comments or you're just agreeing to move on?
No, I was nodding vigorously to the idea of moving on.
Thank you. Any comments to topic 2?
I had one comment, and I'm not sure exactly where this should go. I had it under measure of success, but something around safety and hygiene of the city of Palo Alto, and also emergency preparedness. Since we do have, reservoirs geared specifically for emergency situations. So I guess that's a benefit, but I think that's how I would measure if we're doing a good job with water supply.
I was wondering if we could think a little bit more specifically about this measure of success being council approval of the One Water Plan. I was wondering whether there was a sort of halfway between measure of success and timeline. If a One Water Plan is likely to come before the UAC and council, do we have a specific timeline for reviewing that One Water Plan and providing input on that?
Yeah, that would be, yes, we do. So we'll bring it to the UAC first, and the timeline's open. We're not setting a date yet for when we're going to go to council with the One Water Plan.
So on that note, on the timeline, I think it should be a year-round and multi-year effort. And for under high priority, rather than having knowledge of the city's water supply, I thought understanding the sources of the city's water supply, then take out is coming from, and just and how. So it'd be understanding the sources of the city's water supply and how we maintain that supply. Any other comments to topic 2? So do you want to read us where we are now?
Well, I can repeat what I said, which is safety and hygiene of the city of Palo Alto under normal circumstances and emergency preparedness in abnormal circumstances. And, it's a little, honestly, it's a little murky to me what the measures of success are supposed to be about. You know, they seem mostly bureaucratic-y kind of things like write a report or get city council to agree. And, you know, to me, usually measures of success in a business have to do with, you know, success, right? Having some impact in the goals of the business.
So I just want to say one thing. I think normally you're right about the way it works in a business. I think we haven't decided what we want to do yet because these haven't come before us. And it's often hard to say what the measure of success is when we as a commission hasn't decided what the goal is or what the plan is or what we're even going to do with this. I think that's something we struggle with. I mean, I don't disagree that it's sort of bureaucratic, but I think that's what makes it hard to come up with a measure of success. We haven't discussed it. We don't really know what the measure of success looks like until we do.
I actually think that's an important point. And I think that including emergency preparedness. I don't feel very strongly which category, maybe another commissioner has a preference there in terms of safety and hygiene. I guess, I mean, we're talking about sources. I guess we'd want safe and hygienic sources as part of the beneficial impacts.
Well,
Somewhat
I'm
goes
just-
without
I
saying.
don't know, maybe this, I'm just reading the topic, which is water supply, water infrastructure, and the potential future sources of water supply. And if you ask me how I would know if the water infrastructure and sources of water supply are successful or not, I would say if the water is safe to drink and there's enough of it, something like that. So, you know, that I'm just reading the stuff and
That sounds good to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, sufficient, safe and hygienic supply or something seems like a pretty good measure of success.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think emergency preparedness is an important thing that we explicitly have we spend money on, right? Having wells that have emergency power supplies and having reservoirs that wouldn't be used if there wasn't an emergency. So I think that's something we spend money on and we should call out.
May I
How
just
about,
propose the inclusion of resilient?
could we just finish this though? How about sufficient,
None of these topics are covered in one water plan.
right? I mean, this is not one water plan though. This is water supply, which the one water plan addresses. But I mean, that's important to note and maybe something we should talk about next time that comes before us, but sufficient resources, you know, during an emergency is a reasonable measure of one measure of success, I think is worthwhile. Emergency preparedness, I don't know how you measure that, but sufficient water resources for an emergency seems like a good measure. I'm sorry. No, that's okay. It's okay. So do you want to read those now?
Okay, how about the boat right? The two items that we changed are in standing topic number 2 are the timeline. This is not a single effort or project, however, a year-round and multi-year effort. We added and multi-year. Under measure of success, council approval of the One Water Plan, which includes adaptable dynamic water supply portfolios. safe and hygienic water supply under normal circumstances and sufficient resources in an emergency situation.
Commissioner Forsyth, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I have just a little bit of a meta comment, noting that it's 7 p.m. and we're on topic number 2 of 12. But I worry that we are overthinking what this document is for. It is not the ultimate definitive statement of what we as a UAC believe. It is a document that council is going to have a quick look at and say, yep, UAC looks like you're working on the right things. Or potentially say, oh, UAC, we're not sure about this thing or that thing. You guys shouldn't be talking about that. So I'm real, like 7 people wordsmithing box by box a form that none of us chose and none of us would have filled out in exactly the same way, because each of us would have filled it out a slightly different way. But I don't know that reaching consensus on the text in each of these boxes on each of these pages is a good use of our collective time. So I just want to appeal to the group to sort of, if it's good enough, maybe we let some things go. Just remembering that we're just trying to let council know, here's what we're working on. Does that sound like the appropriate things for the UAC to be working on?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think for all the new people, this is not a policy document. I think that's the key issue I think we're missing here, is that this really is so council doesn't slap our hands and say, no, you can't work on that. Or you forgot to work on this. That's basically what they do with this. No, we're never going to discuss a topic that comes before us and go back to this and say, what did we put down as the measure of success? We're never going to do that.
I think those are both very important and fair points. So why don't we do this? I still think we need to go through each of them. I don't know what commissioners' views are, but why don't we address them with that in mind? So if you have small, and maybe, well, what I'm wondering is, do we have time? Are we going to have to approve it tonight as whatever language? We don't have time. Okay, so never mind my other thought. So why don't we turn now to, I've lost track. Are we on topic 3? Thank you. Which is, he's got off. Electric supply. Okay, electric supply. So if there are any other, or if there are any big comments to 3. Any commissioner comments? Sure.
I concur with Commissioner Forrestal's sentiments. My only comment is that I think when there are major efforts that we expect to come before the UAC on specific issues, it's a little bit of a punt to say that these are always ongoing things. So if there are any specific things we expect in terms of timeline that will come before the commission, it may be beneficial to be explicit about that. And I do not know enough to inform that.
No, that's a fair point. And the way this document works, really, there's standing topics and then there's the
Specifics.
right. And so the standing topics are really what's under auspices that are going to come before the UAC over time, always, right? And then the specific ones are our best guess. And so if there is something that seems to be missing or whatnot, that's probably a good place to talk about it. Okay, so we move on to gas standing topic 4. Yes, Commissioner Metz.
This one, per the discussion we had a few minutes ago, I would suggest not referencing PG&E.
So the difference here is that PG&E is the only other person that has gas rates, or the only other, there is no other. There is no other.
Surrounding us, I mean, Southern Cal Gas has gas.
they're way higher.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's probably not comparable, right? I mean, I think this is, we could say it's historical, but our historical relationship with PG, but that's who we look at, frankly, and that's.
I mean, we could just say lower than, like, yeah, and everyone else is PG&E.
Mm.
I mean, if there's a concern about leaving PG&E, we could just say then comps, then regional comps or local comps.
Which would be a euphemism for PG&E,
So
you know, I mean, they're literally the only other people out there doing it that's not Southern or.
On the budgeting process and deciding rates, I guess a question I have is, this one had a specific target, you know, kind of below the local rates. And I was wondering on the comments about, you know, do we want to incentivize kind of people to move toward electric? Should we have this as a goal, or should we just have, like, in the budgeting process, do you decide like how much profit you want on each type of, you know, electricity, gas, water, et cetera? And I'm just wondering, do we want the flexibility to decide, okay, well, we're going to let gas be a little bit more expensive, and we're going to make electricity be a little bit cheaper? I don't know if that's even something we could do, but it is. Okay. All right. So, all right, I'll just leave my comment then.
no, it was a fair question. Yeah, despite being a city that runs all of its own utilities, we have amazingly little control when it comes to rate setting. Okay, any other comments on 4? Okay, standing topic. It says, okay, 6.
Well, 5.
Right. Oh, sorry, it's just my eyes. Standing topic 5, CIP. I don't know if we feel that we need to say, discuss and advise on CIP projects related to gas, water, electric, wastewater, fiber, sustainability, but. Okay, yes.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to suggest adding, it says completion within the timeline approved by council. I would like to add within the timeline and within budget.
Yeah. I have the exact same comment,
Okay.
actually.
Oh, yeah, I approved it.
Any other comments on topic 5? I just had, there was an asterisk at the end and I didn't know if that was supposed to lead us to something. In the beneficial impacts, the very last thing.
It's not supposed to be an asterisk. It's supposed to be the little dot, but every time I try to add a dot. So specifically that we're talking about the outage management system, if you look at timeline and then you see the bullet, that bullet is meant to talk about the timeline. So most of our utilities are multi-year projects, council approved CIP budget. Most of these are multi-year. However, with the timeline for the outage management system, it's anticipated to be installed integration complete by the end of Q2 2024. And under resources, there's 2 bullet points. Those specifically go to the outage management system. What is required specifically with that one is IT time and staff time. So most of our CIPs are all kind of requiring the same information. However, this specific outage management system requires different unique situations. So that's what the asterisk, these are supposed to be asterisks, but the system turned them into bullets.
Got it.
I
Thanks.
can figure out how to make that more clear.
Yeah, that's probably good. Any other comments on 5? Standing topic 6.
I had, one comment that I wasn't sure if it belonged here or below in the SCAP discussion, which, perhaps. But something around grid, enhanced reliability in the CPAU grid and in the generation transmission that supplies our grid.
Which box are we talking?
Oh, I'm sorry. Under the, I had it under the metrics, measure of success.
Okay.
So, but I think this could apply equally to this standing topic 6 or to the SCAP topic below, which are 3 things: enhanced reliability in the CPAU grid and, the generation transmission that supplies us. 2, plan for grid of the future that incorporates the obvious things, local renewables, DER, DER, DM, and 3, progress toward achieving those. And you could park those either under resilience, reliability of the grid, or under what we need to do to make SCAP possible.
I think it really, this one is more than just electrification, so I think it belongs probably with SCAP. I mean, this is right. This is, according to the way it's written, it's not just electricity, right? It's water, gas,
Right.
fiber. So
I was just picking up the electrical part of this topic.
right. That's why I'm saying
yeah,
SCAP might be a
yeah,
better place
okay,
for
yeah,
it.
good point.
Yeah, and I guess the same thing, the priority, I don't care, but basing it on SCAP when that's only a portion of it. I mean,
Right, that's why I put it
right.
there,
No, I understand.
because of SCAP.
Right.
listed there.
Just, we need reliable, resilient utilities.
Yeah.
Just it's just broad. I don't think there's really any controversy about that. We want resilient and reliant utilities. Any other comments to topic 6? Okay. Standing topic 7, legislative initiatives. Any comments there? Yep.
I actually thought this was quite an important topic, so I was kind of concerned with the comment, this is a non-measurable project. Because if it's not measurable, we should not do it, I guess. And certainly not pay for it. But I think it is quite important, and we can measure success in terms of whether legislation rolls in CPAU's favor, in terms of whether we're caught unaware by legislation that's not in our favor. So I think those would be 2 important measures of whether we do. I think it is important. I think it is measurable. I think those are 2 of the measures, that we know what's going on and that we don't get surprised very often.
I'm wondering whether this also encompasses funding opportunities from the city, and whether there's active review of said funding opportunities by CPAU.
Could you say that again?
Can you explain that a little more? Yeah.
Sure. So there are several funding initiatives under the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA that may be opportunities for Palo Alto Utilities Commission to at least advise, or I should say Palo Alto Utilities should be tracking those opportunities and identifying ways to use federal funds, especially to augment some of our other objectives. And I don't know whether there is active review of said opportunities ongoing, and maybe that should be reflected in this document.
Yes, we do track those throughout the year. Utilities is actively seeking and applying for federal, state, and local grants as well.
Would it be possible to incorporate that, you know, as maybe legislative and funding initiatives? And
under which,
even as a title for the topic 7?
in the actual title?
And then instead of federal, well, yep, I think that's sufficient.
I kind of take to heart Commissioner Met's comment about this is a non-measurable project. I think we don't have to have a number or anything, but just participation in relevant legislation and funding opportunities is a way, that's something. Yeah, I don't know that we have to get into that conversation, but just I kind of take to heart that it's not non-measurable is probably a little aggressive on the other side, you know.
We could probably just, like I said, we could just do an informational report whenever we apply for one and follow up probably down the road, whatever the outcome was. That they, you know, we were able to get some funding or we weren't able to get any funding.
I think that would be.
Any other comments? Okay, standing topic 8, council-driven initiatives. Any comments? I think that one kind of stands on its own. Before we move to the 2024 topics, it seemed to me we didn't have anything about fiber or wastewater in standing topics. And I think I don't know if there is a reason for that.
There's a very, very broad mention of fiber. I was worried about that too, but it's just like the word fiber somewhere in the list.
Well, the objective of the standing topic is this is something that never goes away. This is something that is a constant for the city and for Palo Alto Utilities itself. Whereas fiber is a project that we're working on. So it's something that we're bringing to the city. It's something that we're enabling. So that, at least is not yet, is a constant, consistent, always, because it's something we don't have. It's something that we're working on. So maybe in the future, once we get it completely installed and implemented and it's throughout the whole city, it will then become an actual standing thing where we have, you know, we're consistently, it's part of our rates now. It's part of our infrastructure now. But as of right now, it's not a standing topic because it's something that it's a project we're actually trying to get up off the ground.
Okay, then that makes sense. And it seems maybe then we might want to put it into a 2024 topic. Presumably sometime in the next year, there will be some element of it that would come to UAC. So maybe we move it there. And then if that is the guidance, I think wastewater probably should get mentioned. I don't think we really need to review the language. We can trust you to put it in.
Can you use your mic, please?
Sorry, Lisa, I apologize. So
No
I think
worries.
that we need to put it in the 24. We'll stick it in there then for the fiber.
Great. Shall we move on to the first FY?
Are you going to do the plan?
Yeah, so we will add wastewater as another standing topic. Right?
Can you kind of describe what your thoughts are around wastewater?
Well,
I mean, you want to know about the ongoing projects that we're going to be doing in 24 on around wastewater?
well, I guess I had two thoughts in mind. One is that to inform city council, it just seems like it's a standing topic. We do have this replacement project going on as well. And so it is something that's sort of, on the front burner, so to speak. So those were my two thoughts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We do actually have the sanitary sewer projects. We finished sanitary sewer 30. We now are working on sanitary sewer 31. That is going to council in May. So that would be considered, one of your CIP projects. But if you'd like, we can break that out. So.
I'll leave it to you guys unless someone feels strong. Okay. Topic 1 is SCAP support. Any comments on that?
I had a comment, which was the description is pretty descriptive, but the only thing I don't see in there is demand, discussion of demand side, like what we could do on the demand side of achieving the goal, reducing demand for power, basically power, water, etc. So I don't know if that goes in the title or beneficial impacts. Everything here is so a wide range of things, but it doesn't touch on demand. So it includes electrification efforts, possible code modifications, potential for full or partial retirement of gas distribution system, electrification of gas appliances, and demand management efforts, or something like that.
Jonathan, did you have any thoughts on that?
Jonathan
Sorry,
Abendschein. Oh, there he goes.
Sorry, having some trouble getting the video to start working. Yeah, that seems like a reasonable thing to add. I might add, we'd call it either energy efficiency or demand management. Either one works for us.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest adding what I think is the most important thing that seems to be missing is CPAU providing the grid of the future, the grid that we need to make SCAP possible. I mean, this talks about electrification of I assume it means of buildings and permitting and stuff like that and codes and all, but it doesn't actually say anything about the most important thing, which is having the grid that makes everything work. So I think that's the most important thing.
part of the reason for that was that and I think when you talk about grid of the future, you're not just talking about adding capacity to the electric grid, which is one of the projects that the utilities is working on, but also integrating smart loads and storage and solar, and more than that, vehicle to grid and so on. And that topic, the council explicitly assigned to the SCAP committee, which is why it's not on this list. It's on the list it's on the SCAP work plan for the SCAP committee. And I wouldn't be surprised if the SCAP committee wants the UAC to have a role in that, but they haven't discussed it. They haven't been able to really agendize that yet. So we'll have to, I think, come back with that when it's when they've had a chance to discuss it.
I guess, Jonathan, I guess the thing is that we could put it in the plan, though. I mean, like you said, we don't know what council's role is going to be given to the UAC, but they're probably going to want them to be somewhat involved. So I think that we could just add some quick language in there around the grid modification portion, don't you think?
Yeah, and it would make sense because it would make sense because the list is discussing and providing UAC support to the SCAP committee. So I think it makes sense in that context.
I had written some language. It said at the end of the description and future technologies for sustainability, resilience, and reliability. Do you think that gets there?
Well, I think the word grid has got to be in there because that's the main thing that we do about SCAP. Right. And we've had I was on the SCAP technical team last year, and we've had discussions in this commission about this topic in the past year. And I think there was a pretty clear picture that we were not totally, the grid planning of the utility was not completely in sync with the needs of SCAP. And so I think explicit recognition that we need to get those two in sync and that we have responsibility, particularly on the grid side, to make that happen is really important.
Any objection to that? Adding grid as well? Is there any conflict with the SCAP directives from the city council?
I don't think so.
Makes sense to me. Okay. Any other comments on topic 1? Topic 2, AMI.
I have a clarification question. Under timeline, it says expected to be complete by calendar year Q4 2024. That means that AMI will be installed everywhere in the city? Is that what full rollout means?
We are keeping our fingers crossed. Yes, that's what it means, that we will be able to get all the meters, water, gas, and electric in by the end of this 24.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So on that note, I would like to take off discuss the launch and just launch and deploy. On the very top where it's or launch and broad deployment or something. Any other comments on
I had
AMI?
one question for Dean. Director Batchelor, the beneficial impacts to customers are talked about, EVs and leaks and outages and so on. Is it part of the plan for FY24 that some of those will, accrue in this fiscal year? Or is it just the metering that will be available?
Just the metering will be available for 24. We are planning, we're in the stages right now. We're just in the planning stages to roll it out. The grid.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to EIRP topic 3. Any comments there? Okay. Great. Topic 4, the One Water Plan. Any comments? Okay.
I wasn't sure where to bring this up, whether it was in SCAP or in this one, but it strikes me that, as part of the way in which we've parsed these different topics, there's not a lot of opportunity to discuss coordination between them. So bringing on one water supply, for instance, is likely to significantly increase electric load consumed by the water utility. And I'm just curious about whether we are thinking about pathways to demand flexibility within the utility sectors themselves. I've realized that's a little bit niche, and I'm not sure it belongs here at all. But it did seem like either somewhere recognizing the to Commissioner Metzner's point, the grid impacts of some of these upgrades, whether it was worthwhile representing that somewhere. If not, we can pass. I don't need to die on this hill.
That is definitely something that we can bring up to the water team. And in the event that there is a crossover or a connection between them, we can work that in. I don't know that it would be in the One Water Plan itself. However, the One Water Plan having that connection would be something that we could bring to the UAC and discuss amongst staff.
Yeah, I think my broader point is that there's often a lot of connectivity between utilities broadly. And by parsing out these into very individual and very discrete topics, the opportunities to think about fiber at the same time you're thinking about laying gas pipe or new water pipeline or purple pipe sort of gets missed because we're looking at these as very discrete silos. I trust that you are not looking at those just as discrete silos within the utility itself, but it's just unclear how to follow the Brown Act guidance on only being able to talk about the standing committee topics on a monthly basis if the end goal is to have a utility system that's well integrated and coordinated.
So maybe the suggestion might go back to talking about the reliability. Perhaps there, because I think these topics to me that, they're kind of separate in that way. They're kind of siloed from what we have. And so trying to find something because I don't think we just want to make another topic.
No, I don't
So
either.
I think maybe going back to that has impact to the reliability of the whole entire system. So maybe what we can do is we can add some language there that when there's synergies that make sense for us, then we do. I mean, it makes sense for us if we have a water line and a gas line, or we're going to be doing some electric work, and it makes sense that the water line needs to be replaced because it's that time. We open the street up. We're only trying to open the street at one time.
Right.
So we look for those type of things, and there might be others that we'll be able to look at. So I think we can mention it in that.
That's great. And I guess my goal would just be to make sure that as we cover agenda items throughout the course of the year, that the opportunity to cover impacts on other utilities or upgrades that might be necessary for other utilities isn't precluded because of our legal requirements to put those issues on the agenda in advance. Does that make sense? As an objective, I don't, the document itself, right. But it's the ability to talk about that's important to me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, I've lost my page. Thank you. Topic 5, undergrounding. Any comments there? Yeah, Commissioner Minutes.
This is something that I've been asked about by multiple residents. Obviously went underground in their neighborhood. But I'm not sure if it should be part of this document, but do we need, sort of a set of guiding principles to tell us when we underground and when we don't? Is it, and I'm just not sure if it belongs in here or not, but it seems like we need some kind of way to decide, or maybe it already exists and I'm just not aware of it. So maybe Director Basser can touch on that. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's a major topic as we've talked about it here for
Yeah.
many years. And, you know, I think that, we wanted to make sure that we put this back up here because, we need to make a concentrated effort, to start looking at, rebuilding some of the underground areas that are already out there. They're coming up into starting to get to the end of the life, as well as, we need to expand in new areas and new locations for undergrounding. So we thought that maybe what we should do is we actually from a UAC standpoint, but also just from a staff standpoint, that staff knows that we're going to measure this year. We need to really take a hard look at it, and that we're saying that, yes, we're working on this, and we are, but I wanted to put something on here so that, because I'm also understanding from council, this is a very important topic for them as well too. So I thought that maybe if we broke it out, it's a standalone. We need to make sure that we're doing something with this. So I'll leave it to you that if you feel that it's not necessary, I'm more than willing to be flexible and take it off.
No, I actually think it's a good time, especially as we're starting to roll out fiber, or a small portion of fiber, because the undergrounding projects will have an impact on which districts we start fiber, right? If we're in the process, if we're about to underground a district, we wouldn't want to put fiber up then. So I actually think having a timeline would be helpful.
I agree, and I think this is an area where transparency is particularly important, because if all the places people talk to me about what's going on with undergrounding, why is this neighborhood undergrounded, what are the plans for undergrounding mine, it doesn't necessarily, we need, I think, you know, a date and time, but certainly more outreach to the community about what's going on here would be very useful.
I had a similar comment to Commissioner Motter. Did I say your last name right? Motter? About on this topic, you know, I assume that when you come to us with plans on undergrounding, it seems to me like, why would you ever do it unless you were ready to upgrade the electrical? So don't put it under unless you've got the new equipment or whatever you need to upgrade the grid. Is that a consideration, or should we include the dependencies? Because it does seem like this kind of topic is inherently going to bring in, you know, the topic of modernization.
Yeah, I think our idea is that, you know, we definitely, we need to upgrade our grid. There's no questions asked about that. It's going to be extremely costly to do this, but we also want to look at where there's some aging infrastructure that makes sense, that where we can try to underground at the same time, and maybe then add some fiber into the ground at the same time. These are the synergies that we're just talking about around the reliability aspects of it. And where can we gain some continuity between the utilities and share costs, and start back and start a somewhat of a slow program on the undergrounding. So I think that it's something that, again, reason why we wanted to put this up there. So did I answer your question? Or no? I don't think so.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to, when it does come up, I would hopefully it would be integrated with the topic on the agenda of modernization, because we're going to want to talk about modernization at the time that you're talking about opening the street and putting the electricity underground, I think. And I don't understand what's involved with modernization, so maybe that's not a concern.
Well, I think that the whole thing around the modernization portion of it, if we've identified that our number one goal is we have to change out equipment. So you have transformers, switches, and things like that, which gets put brand new into an existing underground system today. But we also have to increase our secondary wire, which is the wire that feeds to our homes. that brings the power in. And then you have the high voltage power that's up on the top half of the pole. So that's probably okay. We've seen that pretty much. We think that the primary side throughout the system is fine, but what's problem is it's the secondary side. Actually, the power that comes from the pole into our homes. That seems to be the problem, and that's where we actually have to concentrate on. And we usually then, at that point, we underground both of those. We underground the primary, and we also underground the secondary at the same time. And then the biggest challenges, as the commission knows, it's what do you do with the transformers that are now going to be in someone's front home? That's the biggest problem. Nobody wants to have the transformer. Everyone wants to go underground, but nobody wants to have that box in the front of their home. So that's been a challenge. And then the other challenge has been is there is a cost to the customer, and that is they have to change their electrical panels out. Because right now they accept the overhead wires going into the top of their panels. Now it's going to be actually coming in from the bottom half of the panels. So there is some cost to that. And we've had some customers that are having some difficulties paying for those upgrades themselves. So, but again, I think though that when we bring it, we would bring it in as an upgrade in this location that we are going to underground, and also we're going to increase the grid capacity. So you'll see both at the same time.
And just as some comfort, when an item is agendized and we discuss it at the UAC, I mean, for the most part, staff, is thinking about these things and will mention synergies, but if they don't, that is one of our responsibilities, is to bring it in. And while we are limited to items that are agendized, if there's an issue that touches upon it, we're not prohibited from talking about it then. So hopefully that brings you some comfort as well. Okay, topic 6, cybersecurity. Any comment?
I was curious about physical security as well as cybersecurity. Is that given that 9 substations have been, attacked over, I guess, about the last 4 months? Is that part of this effort, a separate effort? Is that responsibility of utilities or responsibility of law enforcement, or all in between?
The actual physical of actually protection of putting up, cameras and the fiber portion of it and all that is fallen onto the utilities perspective. And then, of course, PD will help us with the roving, going around in the areas of the pump station, the reservoirs, all our substation portions of it. We do have alarms at all of the pump stations, all the substations, all our gas stations. For those gas stations are basically where we take gas from PG&E, and it's in 5 different locations. So it's just, so we call them gas stations, but it's actually a receiving station from PG&E. So they are physically with our SCADA systems. So any kind of door alarms or entries or cameras or things like that. And then it also is monitored at the 911 center.
So the kind of implication here is that we feel good about the physical security, but the cybersecurity still needs work. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Okay.
I don't actually think this is a good time to have that conversation, but I think it's okay to expand this as security, both cyber and physical security, as a topic together. But yeah, I just want to caution that this really is a work plan discussion, and we don't want to get too far into specific items. Okay, any other comments besides combining physical and cyber security? Okay. Topic number 7, water quality.
I had one small comment, which is under high priority, it says not applicable. I sort of think water quality is high priority.
The concept isn't that it's not a high priority for us. The issue between high priority and a low priority differentiates between this is something that we do in general. So it's a high priority, meaning we have to take care of it right now because there's an issue. Water quality for us is a year-round constant thing. So it's a low priority, meaning we don't need to do anything immediate right now because it's constantly a priority for us. So that's the difference how we staff determines high priority, low priority. High priority means this is something that has to happen right now. It's a council directive. It's something that if we don't take care of, there's going to be a problem. Low priority is more of, this is just a constant, this is what we do. It's not something that we have to do right now. It's more something that we consistently, constantly take care of.
I'm not really sure. It's not clear to me why this is a topic at all.
So I think there is a lot of community concern over water quality, and I think it would be nice to have it come to us. And you know, I'd like to hear what their testing is, what's showing. And you know, I mean, I've heard from so many people in the community that they're concerned. If you remember, somebody came to us and wanted to add membrane. Bob Winslow wanted to add membranes to the. So I think, you know, there is something, and I think it's worthwhile for us to have discussed it. I also wanted to add, since I'm talking, under measures of success, I think we should say something like CPAU customers will have access to high quality water, or should have not are fortunate, because that's what it means we've achieved it. You know?
You lucky dogs.
Commissioner Forcell.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in to point out, I believe the community has a concern around suspended solids, and which are not tested for. We test for dissolved solids. And so there's some nuance there, that there's interest in looking at aspects of quality that are not currently on our watch list.
Maybe that's the point, because we have water as a
That's the
standing
request.
topic. What's that?
I said, so from my point of view, that's the request is quite specific, looking at suspended solids in addition to dissolved solids.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. And I believe that was what Mr. Winslow had mentioned.
Yeah, and the request isn't to evaluate Mr. Wenslow's proposal for exactly how, you know, presuming there's a problem and proposing a $500,000 something to deal with it. It's just like, are there some measurements?
Right. So
Can measurements be
additional,
made? Is there actually a problem?
sorry. So I think the point is additional testing rather than what's our programmatic testing, which would fall under the standing water topic.
The only other thing, and I had made my notes down here on topic 7 instead of in the one water, but as Palo Alto considers moving toward a stronger water reuse component, it is incredibly important to be proactive about engaging community around public acceptance of reused water quality. And I would like to see that represented, or I'd like to understand how, whether that is most appropriately represented in the one water plan discussion or down here in these water quality elements.
I think that topic would actually be in the one water. Because that's where we're talking about recycling. We're talking about the testing of the water that, you know, at different points throughout the system. So this is the testing aspect of it. But the one water would be the one where we would want to talk about. I think you're right. The communication piece is going to be extremely important. Yes.
But I think that the communication piece is not so much around supply, it's around quality. So it may, I'm wondering if maybe we could say maybe it's a lower priority or a higher priority. I don't want to prioritize here, but you know, communicating the benefits or changes in water quality associated with any potential water reuse plans.
I guess the question would be is that, I guess the thing I'm thinking about here is that, when are we going to do that? Because we are not there at all, from a utility perspective. And so I think that the idea was, to bring in the water plan, talk a little bit about that, because again, we're talking about a whole different utility. And we don't have a lot of purple pipe that's out there in the first place. And then what are we going to do to purify that? Now, there has been some conversations with Valley Water about that. But I guess we could put something underneath here when we do. We could add that underneath maybe the beneficial impacts. Or
just change maybe measure of success. I mean, obviously you would like to diversify the source of supply in order to advance
Right.
resiliency. And so in diversifying that source of supply, I think that the conversation about the impacts on water quality are imperative.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments to water quality topic 7? Okay. Topic 8. Tesla project. Any comments? Okay. Moving on to 9, sewer replacement. Yes. Any comments on the sanitary sewer replacement? Okay. Topic 10, heat pump water heater program.
So I just want to point out that as we do have resiliency and reliability, we also have the SCAP. So heat pump water heater is a part of the SCAP. So this is a topic that has come out of that because it's now its own issue. So I just want to know that, yes, it is part of the SCAP for those of you who follow the SCAP. But when it becomes its own project and entity, that's why it's been pulled out. So it is still part of the SCAP, but it is now also its own project that we're working.
Thanks for that. Any commissioner comments? Okay, topic 11, electric rate design review. Any comments?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to suggest, and maybe it's too specific for this level, is addressing the hydro adjuster, which I think we agreed in a meeting or two ago was kludgy and, not really doing what it was supposed to be doing. So, maybe that's too detaily for this level, but I think addressing that is something.
Jonathan. Yeah. Oh, you want to add it, Jonathan, or I know we are planning on coming back to the UAC with a report. Once we get approval from council, and adoption of the rates,
Yeah.
or do you want to add it in here? But I thought that we're going to take it separately.
So I think it will be separate. I'm not sure that everything related to electric rate design is all going to come at exactly the same time. So I'm okay with adding a note about this. So electric rate design review. So we could either acknowledge that you can either hear me say that I include the hydro rate adjuster as part of the electric design review, because there actually are a whole list of things that we're doing under that electric design review, or if we want to call it out specifically, I don't mind that, because it is something we're going to be looking at.
So I I can have it say rate design review, including the hydro
Yeah, that
adjuster.
would be fine. That would be fine. Or you can, yeah, no, that would be fine.
Any other comments on the electric rate design review, topic 11? Okay, we'll move to 12, which is the gas supply hedging in winter months topic.
Just a minor, on this one, I think since the topic makes it sound like this, we've decided that we're gonna do this. I would say this is one where we'd say discuss or analyze or consider some weaker verb going up in front of there, and even more nitpicky, it's probably for the winter months instead of in the winter months, but
Makes sense. Any other comments on hedging? Okay, we're getting to the end. 13, gas rate design.
I have a question. Given the plans to phase out gas long-term, maybe it's worth maybe specifically talking about gas rate design review for the present and the future. I don't know whether that's already kind of well established, how you maintain an infrastructure in which many fewer customers are paying into it, but or maybe that's already part of this, but I just want to emphasize that this might not be an annual, like a solely looking at this on an annual basis, but the imperative of looking at this for the duration of, or at least for a longer duration.
So we have not looked at that, and that's not part of this cost base. What we do have into the SCAP plans, or that's going to be going to council, is actually the decommissioning of the gas system. I think that at that point, we need to look at and do some cost basing, as well as how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? And what's that timeline look like? Because, you know, we're guessing that could be 15, 20 years down the road, but it may not be. So I think the thing is, it's not in this cost base. We could probably add it in there as this is something that we need to do. But I can tell you though, that it's actually in the SCAP overall plan that we are starting to look for some consultants to do these plans, and then what those costs might look like.
Well, no need to duplicate. It will get across committees, so.
Any other comments? Okay, we made it through. Thank you, everyone, for your diligence and time reviewing this and
Chair
thoughtful
Siegel?
comments. Yep. Commissioner
Sorry.
Forsyth, sorry.
Quite all right. I did have one thing that I would like to suggest as a potential additional FY24 topic. Specifically, I would really like the UAC to be able to come to council with a policy suggestion to replace the customer pays policy that is currently in place for transformer upgrades that are triggered by a resident attempting to electrify. This is something we've sort of talked about loosely for years, and I would like to have it be part of our work plan and agendized and actioned for us to actually try to make a difference on this one, hopefully fairly narrow and specific topic.
So I would support that. I think that's really important. And I think I would like not only to look at that, but some of the other customer pay things, if staff thinks that are relevant to talk about at the same time. I mean, you've raised a couple over the years. You raised one tonight, and it might be worthwhile to look at all of those customer pays. I have heard from a number of anecdotal evidence about how much trouble how shocked some people are at what they're asked to pay. And I think if we looked at this, I think it would be helpful for all of us.
Yeah, I think the thing is that, we are looking at all of these pay procedures that we've had because, the thing is that in the past, and the reason why these transformers is that, we can't use all the funds for one customer to wants to upgrade for whatever their cost is. However, though, it makes totally sense now to start looking at this since we're going to have to upgrade our transformers in the first place. And it's going to be a ratepayers base cost when we go out and get the bond financing for these upgrades. So I think that these things that we've been looking at, we are planning on taking these back to council sooner. And this is one of the items that we'll take back, but we can definitely put it on the work plan and take those credits, I think, as we go to council then. Yes.
That particular topic is already included in the electric design review. So it's in there, it just wasn't directly pointed out to you on this particular form, but that is one of the topics in the design review.
I think there's some value in calling it out directly because otherwise, it gets sort of lost in the shuffle. And I don't think it's as obvious to all of us that we'd be doing that.
Right. I agree. We can make another topic and we'll put the timeline down and, the measure of success should be fine.
Yeah, I would support that as well. I think it's a great idea. Any other additional items?
I have a question, I guess. It confuses me sometimes what's SCAP, what's are under us, and even this topic about customers paying for something. I feel like it's hard as a resident to understand everything that's going on, and I feel like I get every email. I'm on every email list, so I try to see what initiatives are going on in the city, but yet it does still feel a little bit hard to get a comprehensive view. For example, what do I have to pay for? Like if I'm planning out how to electrify my house over, however many years, 5 years, what are all the things I need to consider? Like, what are the costs that are going to come in? I have no idea. I've never seen those costs in any of the things I've looked at. Maybe they're there and I just haven't dug, but it feels to me like we need to assist people. We need to assist people in making the transition. And part of that is understanding all the pieces that they need to go through to do it. To me, it doesn't seem, I've seen a lot of piecemeal things on website, but I think cost, time, infrastructure barriers like upgrading transformers, we might not be able to do it yet because the city's not, the grid's not ready yet. So I do think there's some element of just having our plan together and then letting people in the community know, because when they come upon the time when it's like, okay, my furnace needs to be replaced, can I even do a heat pump, right? And so sometimes there's an emergency and like, we gotta, get it while the iron's hot, but it just doesn't seem easy as a customer to figure out all the disparate pieces. And I don't know if Utilities Advisory Commission can take this as a topic or if it's a staff thing, or if it's something that's been discussed elsewhere. It just feels really hard to me as a customer to know how to approach electrification over the long term.
So I think the thing is that the work plan that has been working on the SCAP is going to be going to council sometime in May. And then I think what should happen is that our plan was actually to bring it back to the UAC. We can have a discussion or it could be an info report that's given to you. Council's already been approved of it, but I mean, we can have some discussions about what those impacts might be from a UAC and the utility side. So I think that should happen probably maybe in the June timeframe. The report's supposed to get approved, like I say, by in May. We could come back to the commission June, July timeframe about what that plan was and have some discussions if you'd like.
That would be great.
Great. Any other comments with respect to the work plan? Okay, so do we need to move or we just submit it?
If we can go ahead and move approval to go to the city council, that would be fine.
I'll second.
Great, so we'll start with Zoom, Commissioner Forcell. So just to be clear, this is a motion to approve the UAC 2023 to 2024 fiscal year work plan with the modifications provided tonight.
I vote yes.
Great. Commissioner Croft,
I vote yes.
Commissioner Motter,
I vote yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Scharf,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. Great. So thank you all. We got there. Okay, moving along. Are there any other commissioner comments and reports from meetings or events? Anyone? No, quiet month. Okay, and any future topics for any upcoming meetings? Wait, did you have? Okay, great.
I
Just a
have
re-
a, I have a question on how the agenda is set for the next meeting. So, and how far in advance do we see what's coming?
The agenda is, and packet is sent out 9 days in advance. You get it first via email. If you choose to have it paper packet, let me know what address you'd like it to have it delivered to. It will be delivered the Tuesday, so that's, you get hand delivered on 8 days, but you get it 9 days in advance. It then, as soon as you get it, it gets posted up on the website so public can see it. That's pretty much.
My question was actually, can we see, like, how do we know what topics are coming? Or is it just what the city staff has ready at the given time?
No, we do have what's called a rolling calendar. So you do not have it in this packet because this was a very specific special meeting directed only for this purpose of the work plan. However, every month you do have what's called a rolling calendar. So it shows you what is coming up and whether it's going to council, UAC, or finance. We do occasionally take things to the policy and services as well. That's just very rare. So you do know that in advance. Every month you can see what is coming up, and it is also available online. So if you wanted to go online and look now what's coming up in May actually is a very full meeting. We typically would in April select the chair, the vice chair, and any subcommittee members for subcommittees that we may have, like the budget subcommittee. However, because of the change in elections with all of you needing to be interviewed and then selected, there just really wasn't, we weren't even sure if we were going to have a quorum for April. So we shifted those things to May. So in May, on top of selecting a chair, a vice chair, and any committee members for subcommittees, we will have our normal full agenda. So.
Okay, no future topics. So I think, does anyone want to move to adjourn? Yes, the next meeting is May 3rd and we'll be in chambers. Okay, are you moving to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Any second?
Second.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We can wave.
Yes.
Somebody-
Okay, good night.